everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Jedi Way here on the Outlaw Nation channel. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, but known as Rocha, fed around these parts when we're doing this show, and I'm very excited to be back on with these two wonderful people to talk about all the things going on in the world of Star Wars. And who boy, do we have ourselves a heck of a show today, because a lot's been happening over the last couple of weeks. But I'm joined as always by these two wonderful people. First off, the great Laura Kelly, co-host of the Force Toast Pod and co-host here. How are you, Laura?
I'm doing great. You're right. We were debating last week. We're like, oh, there's kind of not really anything to like talk about. That's all that. And then like this week, it all just exploded. It's like, let's just article and think piece and analysis about fandom and Star Wars. And I'm here for it. Let's go.
Yeah. We're doing it early in the week. So much has happened. That's why we want to talk about it. Laura, let me say, you're into golf right now. Have you named your golf club a lightsaber? Have you got is there any kind of connection there? Have you picked a hilt that has a color to a kyber crystal that you like? What are your thoughts there?
No, but that's a good idea. That's how I can personalize a bit. The problem is that I share a set of clubs with my sister, and so she has to kind of approve whatever silly club head cover things that we get. But yeah, I've allowed her to put a Taylor Swift pin on the golf bag, so I feel like I should be allotted something.
Wow.
But a sister. You have a sister.
There is another Skywalker. All right, well, welcome to my boy Kevin Smets. Good to see you, Kevin. How are you feeling? How are things? You're trying to get everything kind of squared away there. The King of KOTOR, the King of the Scoundrels Inc. I said that. Go ahead. What's going on there, brother man?
Remember Venom?
Fresh off your appearance at LA Comic-Con. How are you?
Yeah, packed house. If you saw Getty Images, they were there. Look, stadium seating. We had Hayden stop by, and Ewan, they were there. So George Lucas stopped by, told us his original plans for episode 7, 8, and 9. It was great. So I do want to say, remember that movie Venom when he was like in the MRI machine and he was like, ah! That's what my camera looks like right now. Still having difficulties with StreamYard for some reason, but I want to say to all my fans and all the fans of this show and to you two that I love you guys. That's what it says on my coffee. And now I just screwed up the fresh cone of fresh head. That's like I'm the Lego character and I took the Lego hair off my head. So nice to be here, not wearing a hat and just showing you guys my bald spots.
Look at that. It looks good. I like it.
Thank you.
I might be joining you soon.
Really?
I want to shave it off. It's time.
Hey, you know what my wife says? She says I look younger, so I'll take it. Since I'm older than her anyway, I'm trying to bridge the gap here.
Fair enough. It'll make me look older, probably. All right, well, let's move on to all the big news happening here today. We're going to talk about that big article in Hollywood Reporter asking, is Disney bad at Star Wars? We're going to break down also the article on Variety talking about what the studios are doing to battle some of the toxic fandom stuff. We're going to get into Ewan McGregor. We're going to get into Jodie Turner-Smith's comments and even have some stuff at the end here talking about some new comic books and books that are out there for you all to enjoy. But let's start off here, and that is with the great Ewan McGregor. He was, speaking of Comic-Con, he was at a recent panel at LA Comic-Con, and he revealed that Lucasfilm, and Disney are currently, quote, exploring ideas for a potential second season of his character's standalone Disney Plus series, Obi-Wan Kenobi. He said, quote, obviously between the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi series and when Alec Guinness is Obi-Wan, there's got to be another few stories in there. We're definitely hoping exploring that, I think, would be the word to say. And then he went on to talk about expressing his interest in a Clone Wars era prequel that would see him reunite with Hayden Christensen. I'd quite like to wear that Clone Wars armor. I was speaking to someone earlier from the Clone Wars today. I think that's something I would enjoy. And of course, he's talking about Hayden Christensen there. He also went on to say that he would not mind if he wore tiny dots on his face so they could de-age him. So, Laura, clearly Ewan is putting the hard press on this to make this happen. Do you believe him that they're having preliminary conversations about a season 2? Because like a couple of years ago, Kathleen Kennedy said we would only do a season 2 if there was a reason to do season 2. And do you believe that Hayden and him, is this dangerous, I guess, to consider a season 2 with Hayden Christensen coming back as Darth Vader?
I don't think it's dangerous. And in fact, I think it's probably the safest option Disney has at this point. I mean, in terms of, we'll get into it later, but there's one article that we're going to talk about today that breaks down the viewership of each of the Disney Star Wars live action series. Yeah. And Obi-Wan Kenobi, I mean, right out of the gate, like had amazing numbers and then continued to maintain it through most of its run. So I think of all of the options of all of the series that they could continue on, that's probably their best bet in terms of getting numbers and therefore subscribers and therefore generating funds. And that is the ultimate goal here, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have to think that that has to be a possibility. I'm not personally wild about making it into like a Clone Wars miniseries or like it feels like it's knocking down the animation or trying to replace it in some way. I just don't think that we need both. The animated Star Wars series animation is a valid medium, and the Clone Wars is amazing as it is. And if people want to see that, I would just encourage people to go watch the Clone Wars. Now, do we get maybe a couple more flashback sequences with McGregor in the Clone Wars armor? Sure, I'm open to that. I love that idea, but I don't need like a whole show mostly focused on that. So I'm not wild about that portion of his comments, but I am very excited about the possibility of a season 2 of the show because, like Kevin, I very much enjoyed the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and I'd love to see more.
Yeah, Kevin, it seems to be building, right? This has been happening the last few weeks, this idea of Ewan talking more and more about a season 2. Is he kind of greasing the wheels a little bit? Is he kind of floating some trial balloons out there to see people's reactions for Disney and for Lucasfilm to a season 2 of Kenobi? And do you want to see this? And do you want to see Clone Wars armor on Obi-Wan Kenobi live action?
Well, you guys know that the dream is alive for an angry Mace Windu to be hunting down every Skywalker on Tatooine. Maybe Ewan is a fan of our show and watched that last week. Because I'm excited. I want there to be a season 2. And there would be IPGs and very respectful, hard disagree. I think you can still honor the medium, but go live action because I would really want to see a live action. I've been wanting a live action Clone Wars only because I love the Clone Wars animated. It's great. And I totally appreciate, Laura, your opinion on that you want to keep that and let that be its thing. But, you know, I was trying to think when you were talking of other examples. Unfortunately, some of the cartoons that turned to live action were quite shite, like some of the Transformers movies, the G.I. Joe movie. But then again, Lord of the Rings first was not live action. Lord of the Rings was a cartoon. Yeah. One could say, oh, let's respect the animation, but we got the wonderful Peter Jackson movies, even though that's coming from a novel. So I get it. But a live action Clone Wars, de-aged Hayden and Anakin in the Clone Wars armor and do a gritty, like Apocalypse Now mission where they go on a planet and it's like real dark. And I mean, everybody in Star Wars hates when I say gritty, but come on, Apocalypse Now in space with Hayden, show Hayden like start, the war affecting him. So I think it would be great. I understand why they might not do that and just let this series be, especially because Dave Filoni's at the head of it. Maybe he seems more, precious to that. But, if we're a fan of Ahsoka came from Ahsoka came from the animated, and we got to see her live action. Some people's feelings are mixed on the Ahsoka show, but I thought it was great seeing her in live action. And I think that the Clone Wars cartoon was an homage to Episode 3 and the work that those characters did. And Matt Lanter and Padme was Kat Tabor got to do their honor and their take on what the live action did. So letting then the actors, Hayden and Ewan and what was that? Anderson. Man, Schmodown days are long behind me. The voice of Obi-Wan. What was his name in the Clone Wars? The actor.
James Arnold Taylor.
James Arnold Taylor. There you go. That's future Schmodown champion right there. Oh my God. Should be champion already. Oh yeah, it's not there anymore.
Dead and buried. Go ahead.
Yeah, James Arnold Taylor and Matt Lanter. Right now, let's see. Let now Hayden and Ewan give their homage to them and all the hard work they did and get to see it live action. Plus, unfortunately, some people do hold that opinion of like, well, if it's cartoon, it's not canon to me or whatever. And it would be cool for the Clone Wars to get that kind of, visualization out there for the close-minded fools that don't want to see it anything in animation. So I'd be excited for it, And yeah, I know you guys get annoyed at me pitching all my stories, but Apocalypse Now, dark, gritty mission with Obi-Wan and Anakin, where they're some of their hinted at futures. Anakin maybe losing himself a little bit. Be pretty good.
I think that's the way I could only accept or how can I say this? Because obviously I'm not in charge, but like this is the thing I would love to see. Less is always more. And the truth is, in the Kenobi series season 1, the reason I don't 100% love it is because we don't spend enough time with Obi-Wan. We're off with Little Princess Leia. We're off with Reva. We're off with all these things. And I would just want a Kung Fu series from the 1970s with Obi-Wan, where he is going into different situations in Tatooine and solving the problems and dealing with stuff and maybe, kind of undercutting the Empire in certain moments. Then maybe there's a couple of episodes where there's a flashback to Clone War stuff, and then we get Hayden, and then we get kind of like we saw with Ahsoka, where she has that flashback dream as a young Ahsoka fighting with Hayden there as Anakin in that battle, and I thought that was really cool. Like, to me, that's the way you do it. You keep it limited, you don't do a lot of it, but you make it powerful because it comes at a certain time in the run of the series in order to reinforce the story that's happening. So that
I'd even argue to maybe not, and I know fans of Ahsoka wouldn't like it, but maybe not have Ahsoka, have it like take place early in the war, like before he was assigned Ahsoka.
Sure.
So it could really, like what you were saying, focus on that Anakin and Obi-Wan dynamic.
Yeah,
because the Clone Wars did a great job of focusing on the Anakin Ahsoka dynamic, right? But to really dig in, it's their first mission together, and they get put on a planet, and then they're stranded without hope, and
I just mean the way that they did it live action, right? Yeah, I don't need Ahsoka to show up. It's more a matter of they were able to make it feel like the Clone Wars live action, while not necessarily, as Laura has said, infringing too much on the animated approach to it. But I just want to focus more on Obi-Wan, and I think they will, because the Reva thing is pretty much wrapped up, and she could show up down the road somewhere. She's not going to be hanging out with Luke a lot or with young Leia, it seems like. So he's got to have his own missions. Laura, what would you want to see from a season 2 of Kenobi? Would it be? Kevin pitched Apocalypse. Now I pitched Kung Fu. What do you think you'd like to see from a season 2 of Obi-Wan? Because we're going to be on Tatooine. So what would you?
Yeah, right. My favorite place to go in Star Wars. It's hard to say, and I don't know if I have any ideas about what I think it should be and what it shouldn't. I'm kind of open to all possibilities, but I think in order for the fandom to not have the meltdown that it had with season 1, he really does need to be more front and center. Yeah. I really liked Reva as a character. I loved her story, and I would love to see more of it. I don't necessarily need it in the Obi-Wan show.
Right.
I think that hopefully they learn their lesson a little bit this time in terms of let's actually try and make Ewan a little bit more front and center and have Obi-Wan be more front and center in this story. I think my other biggest issue, though, circling back to the making Clone Wars live action, so much of Star Wars is just building on the same ideas and basically using those all as a crutch. And we get one new, something different, some new original idea, and it gets shat on, in the form of the Acolyte, unfortunately. But I just don't know, you've got the Clone Wars, which was sort of taken and inspired by and built upon the prequel trilogy. Yeah. And then we've got all these new projects with Rosario and as Ahsoka that are kind of building on the Clone Wars. I don't know if I need to go back and do more, we're just leaning on again more of what has come before as a crutch. Yeah. And I know that the Acolyte wasn't necessarily a massive success, but I just want them to try a little bit to have some more original storytelling that doesn't necessarily lean so hard on the crutch of what has come before.
That's unfortunately with the Acolyte failing, I 100% agree with you. I feel like they're gonna go back to their old tricks.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, we're gonna get Luke Skywalker, the young years, and And by the way, true story. The original name of the Obi-Wan series wasn't Obi-Wan; it was called Obi-Wan and Pals. So they just took it off, and that's why we're a little confused that it was like and it had Obi-Wan in the middle, but with Reva on one side, like that, and on the other side.
Title confusion. That was the whole issue.
But I hear you, Laura. I think you make an excellent point. This idea of constantly going back to the thing that has already gone on. Why do we need this? Is this fan service, or is this actually serving the story that you're trying to tell, right? You always have to walk that line. And again, I'll go back to the Ahsoka thing. That wasn't fan service. That worked in the story they were trying to tell because of the past between the two of them. And I thought that worked really well. So if they can make that happen, I think it'd be interesting. My concern is the more you bring Vader closer to Obi-Wan constantly, the more you lose that thing that was cool about the separation of them for all those years and finding each other again in A New Hope to have that battle. The more time and more interactions they have, I think that battle lessens in terms of its uniqueness by having them constantly seeing each other every season of Obi-Wan. That would be my concern on this overall. So I don't know. Am I off base on that? Am I wrong? Am I being a bit of a baby, not wanting to ruin something that I grew up with enjoying, which was this span of time where they had not seen each other leading to that battle?
I think it's totally valid, but I think that I would almost assume that there would be two stories kind of going on at the same time where they're just kind of not necessarily in the same room with each other, but they're sort of almost passing each other. It's like almost in passing, where like it gets really close and then they don't quite actually interact.
Right.
I think that there's something you could do with it there, but I agree. I mean, you've got that line in A New Hope about how they haven't, how it's been a while, and we have to kind of stay true to that. So I understand your concern with that for sure.
Yeah, it's weird because Christian brought this up on our show. He said, like, well, in Return of the Jedi, he says, Obi-Wan once felt as you did. So have we really established that particular line? Could they use maybe another episode with them in a second season of Obi-Wan that would really underline that interaction between the two of them? Kevin, do you think I'm being a baby? What do you think about this?
I don't think you're being a baby. I think they missed their chance with that Obi-Wan. There are some that think that Obi-Wan should not have beaten Vader that second time in the series.
Yeah,
the director or the original writer, Stuart Beattie or whatever, he did an interview, and I saw that, that Vader you would think that Vader would, like, that Obi-Wan at that point wouldn't let his friend, or wouldn't let him live again after seeing everything he'd done, But then again, I can't speak for Obi-Wan trying to, killing your best friend or whatever, your brother. But if they were to duel again or whatever, like, you could have Obi-Wan pleading with him one more time. I do think that they answered that question, though. They did bridge the gap for that. As far as, that's the second time I said bridge the gap today. Weird. But I do think that they said, I think Obi-Wan, was trying to see the good in him. And Anakin, basically when Vader absolved him and said, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did, I think. And then he's like, my friend is truly dead. Goodbye, Darth. I think that can do it. But if they were to duel again, Vader should whoop his ass.
Yes.
But after Obi-Wan again, letting his guard down this time, this is me. I know people get annoyed by fan fiction and stuff, but I'm sure they do. But
who cares? Tell your truth, baby. Speak your truth.
But yeah, like if Obi-Wan were to let his guard down and, do with like what Captain America did with Bucky and like throw a shield down and say, I'm not going to fight you this time. I think there's good in you. And then Obi-Wan or Vader takes so I think there's a chance to do that, but I would rather see them separated too. And there's probably a good storyline in there. Mace Windu coming back to kill any Skywalker that's still alive because Skywalker's cut off his hand and let him fly out a window. I think there's a chance that you could do it without Vader, but I love that idea that Laura had, how they can be in the peripheral. But maybe you don't need to go back and forth so much because it's like you said, it could be Obi-Wan's story here, and maybe it doesn't even connect to Vader. But if they do have a thing where like they're really close, and it's like if you're on the 405 South and North, and then you just say, "Oh, I sense a presence that I sense that presence." But I don't know, because then it could always undo lines that were said in the trilogy. But then again, George Lucas undid his own line. Remember, Leia had memories of her mother. She was kind but sad. I don't know if you guys remember, but when I came out of I was a C-section baby, but when I came out of the womb, I have no memory of my mom being sad or happy or crying. I was an infant child, so I wonder how Leia remembered her mom being kind but sad. She was dead like 2 seconds later. But
you didn't have the Force. She has the Force. Maybe she sensed it.
Well, if we had Twitter back then and Revenge of the Sith, maybe people would be freaking out about as much as that as they do with birthdays, right? Am I right?
And there it is. And there it is.
Right. Some good coffee today.
Love it. Woo. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I think what Laura, what you said is an interesting thing where it's like, because clearly he could find little ways to get dragged into these altercations and use, because obviously he doesn't want to expose himself as a Jedi, so he could use certain things to undercut the Empire at certain moments, and then eventually Vader realizes who it is, like 4 or 5 episodes in, and you have the mini confrontation where Vader just barely misses confronting Obi-Wan, and that could be something really curious and interesting the way you play it out. So yeah, I kind of like that idea. It'd be kind of fun, you know. So
passing ships in the night.
Absolutely.
That could be how they do it.
We will see. All right, let's move on to another topic. This is going to be a slightly controversial one, so let's get into it here. Jodie Turner-Smith has called out Disney for not supporting Star Wars creatives. This was an interview she did in Glamour, a fantastic interview. If you guys haven't read it, you should definitely read it. And of course, Jodie Turner-Smith played Mother Anastasia in The Acolyte. This is Glamour UK, the magazine she did this interview in. And she talked about the criticism that Amanda Stenberg suffered and they suffered and felt that Disney didn't have their back. She said, quote, "It's disappointing to feel like your studio is not having your back in a very public-facing way. They've got to stop doing this thing where they don't say anything when people are getting fucking dogpiled," those are actual quotes, "on the internet with racism and bullshit. It's just not fair to not say anything. It's really unfair. It would just be nice if the people that have all the money were showing their support and putting their feet down. Say this is unacceptable. You're not a fan if you do this. Make a really big statement and just see if any money leaves. I bet you it won't, because people of color, and especially black people, make up a very large percentage of buying power. They might find that it's actually more lucrative for them, but everyone's using woke like it's a dirty word." She did say she was optimistic about the future and about the fandom in the future, saying that opinions change and what's in vogue changes. So she's hopeful that at some point the toxicity just grows muted on all of this. We're going to get there at some point to that place where people stop having a stick up their ass about people of color being a part of IPs that were created by white people. You know why? Because we're never going to stop fucking participating. So very, very strong statements here, Kevin, from Jodie Turner-Smith. Some of the stuff I have said on our show, saying that Disney needs to be more of an active participant in defending creatives, not just creators of color, but all creatives, when the fandom goes after them. But clearly she went way farther and very strongly said her piece about this. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. Like, I wish that the Disney should have thrown a press conference like way early on. Remember, we talked about that on this show, that like an official press conference, like when things are kind of falling apart with a sports team or whatever, or they get a new coach, like they pull a press conference and like assure their fans things are okay. And like, you know, when Acolyte got canceled, they should have called a press conference and explained the reasons why it got canceled, which are more about the money and the viewership, which was literally what happened. But also like to tell the fandom, like, hey, we all got to come together here, and some of this stuff's not tolerable out there in the interwebs. Ewan McGregor was the only one, I think, that came to Moses Ingram's defense. Remember, he made a video in his car, or something, that was calling for fans to be cool. And I feel like that also happened with like Rose Tico, Kelly Marie Tran, right? Yeah. Like, I don't think Disney had her back either. So
not John Boyega's, not Daisy Ridley's.
So it's unfortunate. The fandom, what it is, it's I was talking, actually, we did one episode of Scandals last week, and Frank, our co-host, who's hosted this show before, was talking about how fandom, he thought he can escape how toxic fandom Star Wars was, so he kind of disappeared from it for a while, and he like went to other fandoms that he could find, like, sports. And when you realize, and then he came to realize that all fandoms get toxic, because like sports, the second a quarterback has a bad game, they're turning on him. They just fired that Jets coach today, like had security escort him out. And like, so fandom, it's just this day and age now with social media where fans can get real toxic. And I think that the studios need to now catch up with it and adjust how they protect their actors, because I know as if I was an actor, I would just deal with it because I'd want to be in Star Wars anyway. But I think that there are going to be some main names that they could probably get that are going to look at it and be like, I don't want the headache. And I think they might also see it and be like, and their backup doesn't back them up. Their studio doesn't back them up. Why do I want to go play for that team when I can play for this team? And they're going to have everyone's back. Say what you will about James Gunn and all the DCEU versus the new DCU, but like, James Gunn is active on social media, defending things that they're doing, also defending the creators that were part of the Snyderverse, saying like, look, what they did was good, but like we're changing things. So I think that the studios just need to do a better job of protecting their assets. Because these actors and actresses, even though they get to do the best job in the world being Star Wars, like we talked about it before, and it was such a microcosm. But like when we did Schmodown stuff, like we can get 100 comments of like, but you get that one that didn't like you, and they could just sting you, and you're like, why is this affecting me? But because we're human, Or even in comments when you do these shows and stuff like that, like when people start getting nasty when we were talking about Acolyte or whatever. It's unfortunate. So yeah, I wish the studios would do a better job, and I think they need to institute new protocols moving forward, because this industry now, I mean, they're talking about, and I'm sure this is on the agenda about
this is next.
That's next. So that'll be a good segue, but I don't think that's the right course correction. I think the course correction is they need to engage with the fandom and let them know and protect the actors more or less than give the fans more power. That's the opposite they should do. But
yeah, Laura, I gotta ask you, I mean, were you surprised that Jodie came out so powerfully and strongly about this? I mean, because when I did the reaction for Amanda Listenberg, I mean, she's like combing her hair, unbraiding, and so it's a casual kind of approach to it. This was much more of a stronger approach, almost, dare I say, a mother approach here from Jodie Turner-Smith as the character she played there, and was really laying waste to Disney about their inability to step forward. What are your thoughts on her comments, and do you think she's right?
I think it's amazing. I mean, good for her. I'm so happy that she did this and that she said this, because it needed to be said.
Yeah.
She's doing the right thing by calling out Disney, because Disney is not doing the right thing by staying silent on these topics. We'll get into it in one of our future topics, but like the fact that they seem to think that if they just don't address it, they won't call attention to it. And that's how they kind of get around it. Like that, it's just not the answer. There's a way to address it without involving the sort of casual fans. There's a time and a place to do it.
Yeah.
That it's probably not going to reach your average casual Star Wars fan, but it will reach the people that are being loud and bigoted online. It'll reach the people that are calling for them to be called out on it. So what they're doing now is not working at all, and I'm so glad that Jodie Turner-Smith took the time and energy to call them out and to have. This is a big chunk of this interview, her talking about Disney and about working on the Acolyte, and really talking up, her cast members and how this has been an ongoing problem in Star Wars. This didn't start nor will it end with the Acolyte. This started long before it, and they acknowledge a lot of that in this Glamour article too. I'd highly encourage people to read it. It's a great article, but yeah, this isn't surprising. I'm glad somebody said something. I hope that the rest of her castmates will be able to speak up and kind of say their piece on it too. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them don't. They want to keep working, and it could potentially affect their relationships with some of these big studios if they speak out against one like Disney. So I 100% understand why they wouldn't say something, but I'm glad that she did.
As am I. I thought look, first of all, we all have a right to our opinions, and we all have a right to express them. She has a bigger platform than most to express them, and so she stepped forward and did it. And I think what she said carries a lot of weight. And as I said, it's something to a degree that I've said in the past, that Disney needs to be behind these people and support these people and come out more forcefully. Because if you're going to make the projects, you better stand behind the projects, right? This idea of like, look, it's great that you went in one direction. You want to go and be more diverse, and you want to look for more diverse roles, diverse characters, cast diverse actors, LGBTQ+. I'm all for opening the door for all of that stuff. But once you do, you got to stand behind all of them for what they take. Because look, they went with white actors at the beginning in the original trilogy because that's what white actors were leading all the franchises pretty much, and all that. That's a business decision. It wasn't that they were the best actors and only actors who could do it. It was because they wanted to go in this direction. That's where George did it. Now they course pivoted for this most recent stuff, and they want to be more diverse, more open. I'm fine with it, but your brand now is so massive, you've got to stand behind your creative. So I love that Jodie had the guts to say all of this and call Disney out, because Disney's playing both sides, and we see it in the fandom. Disney appears on certain shows, people connected to Disney appear on certain shows, and so it's like they're open to all of it, and they want to walk that line of like not offending the anti-woke people by saying anything, but really encouraging the woke people, quote unquote, to look at their product and be like, look what we're doing, look at the changes we're making. And so they're trying to play both sides of this. And to me, it's how can I say this? It's not genuine. It's disingenuous. And that's the frustrating part. So to see Jodie coming out saying these strong statements, and also I think at the end saying, she's optimistic that things will change. And I think she's got her finger on something that hopefully we've hit the tide of this stuff. And now it comes crashing down and we start to look at this stuff a much more equally. And in the future, we now start to, hopefully Disney sees, we need to spend way more time making sure this stuff is good, because that's how you shut down all the voices, is make great content, good to great content with your creatives, regardless of their color, regardless of their sexual orientation, and that people will enjoy across the board. And so I think there's a lot to be said about that. But shout out to her for speaking her piece and speaking her mind, because as you said, Laura, a lot of the younger actors might not do that because they risk getting cast again. And Disney certainly encompasses Marvel and Fox, all these characters and possibilities. So maybe these younger actors don't want to risk that. But also, how many of them are really prepared to risk the backlash of speaking out? That's a lot to ask of people. And so I think Jodie's one of those that's like, I bring it. She don't give a shit. And
they've already endured so much, I wouldn't blame them for wanting to walk away from all of it entirely and never look back. I get it.
Yeah, 100%. But I'm with you. I wish more people would speak out about this and call out Disney, and I wish Disney would listen. But let's take a quick break. And on the other side, we'll talk about the two things where we were alluding to here, what steps the studios are taking to deal with this toxic fandom right after this. All right, let's get to it here. Hollywood is exploring super fan groups to mute toxicity. That is the Variety article. Is this going to work? This is the question I have for you all. Let's take a look at this thing. We've heard, this is an article Variety put out here to talk about toxic fandom and what's been happening here. And they interviewed people from different franchises to talk about it. One of the executives at a major studio said it comes with the territory, but it's gotten incredibly loud in the last couple of years. The article goes on to say some of the toxic fandoms reacts reactively, like when the House of the Dragon episode featured two female characters kissing, and then an episode of The Last of Us focusing on a gay couple were both review bombed. And just frequently, the backlash begins before the project even sees the light of day, as we heard from Amanda Lestenberg with The Acolyte, but also with Bridgerton and with Rings of Power, which, by the way, just wrapped up what a lot of people tell me is a fantastic second season. John Van Sitters, the VP of Star Trek brand development, says the vast majority of fandom are casual fans, but the number of people who live and die on their franchises are very, very few. And those who come after things that they espouse to love with Venom are a really, really tiny subset. It's just that the bullhorn wasn't there in the past. Now it is. And now we're reading in the article that the fear of inadvertently triggering another backlash has kept several studios from commenting on this story. And those who did talk with Variety apparently all agree that the best defense is to avoid provoking fandoms. And in addition to standard focus group testing, apparently studios will look to assemble a specialized cluster of superfans to assess possible marketing materials for a major franchise project. And the other element that they're apparently putting in motion now is that when a character is intentionally challenging a franchise's status quo, studios will, with the actor's permission, take over their social media accounts entirely. And when things get really bad, especially involving threats of violence, security firms will now scrub talent information from the internet to protect them from doxing. That is so much to consume here that it almost makes my head spin. Laura, super fan groups and taking over your Twitter account, is this where we're at now?
The taking over of one's Twitter account, I think I can get behind, especially if it's protecting an actor from having to see all that negativity and that bigotry. Yeah. I wouldn't blame someone at all for wanting to just hand it over and just be like, I don't want to see it. You see it and you deal with it. I 100% get that. And to protect them from doxing. I mean, of course. Right. But I think that these super fan focus groups, this is the worst idea I think I've ever heard. Ever. I mean, this is horrendous to think about a group of people like that driving the content that we're going to be getting going forward. I absolutely hate it. It actually makes me a little bit sick to my stomach to think about it. And I'm not even banking on the fact that they're going to be working with like all super toxic, bigoted people,
right?
Where they're like trying to get their approval so that they don't get backlash. I imagine those people would be included, but even just talking to like positive Star Wars fans, maybe that consider themselves super fans, you guys, we just don't always know what we want. How many times do we get like a project announced and we're like, who asked for this? Seriously. And then we see it and we're like, well, shit, now I've just had it handed to me because that was fantastic. It happens all the time. And so I don't think you can go to fans and get any kind of good to come out of it in this way. Like I maybe go to fans and prepare yourself for like what you're going to get once the project's already done. But my God, if this is the way that all of the big studios are going, we're so fucked. We're so incredibly fucked for all of these big pictures and who's getting funding to make these big movies and these big franchises. It's all gonna fall apart.
Kevin, one of the studio execs says that these groups, they will just tell us if you do that, fans are going to retaliate. And apparently these groups have been already involved in these projects, saying this even led studios to alter the projects if it's early enough. This is from an exec. Quote, if it's early enough and the movie isn't finished yet, we can make those kinds of changes. Kevin, people can't agree what they want to have for lunch. How the hell are you going to get people together in a room and try to find out what they want out of a Star Wars project and if it's good or not, or if it's going to get retaliation? And do you trust anti-woke people to be in the same room with woke people and actually have some consensus without tearing each other's throats out? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, as you were reading all these new rules, I was like, it's like, and now social media will be organized to a galactic empire. I will take control of your Twitter. I will tweet for you. I mean, I see the scrubbing of their personal data would be fine, and if the person wants to give away, that just sounds like so many headaches that they're going to just lose. Like potential actors will be like, what now? All this. But yeah, I mean, they do have focus groups and test screenings in movies, and if things work and they don't, then they can, tweak it. But giving this much power, like, to the fandom is folly. It's bad because, every movie will just be full of great fan service. That's like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what fan films are. Like, let's be honest. So I think that it's good to have your finger on the pulse of what would work. And that's with having a little bit more people in the room where they're making creative decisions that are more like, I love where they have people. I love when they have people outside of Star Wars come in and, work on it. I think that's a positive, but you got to make sure you do have a couple people there that are like lore legends, right? That know everything about it, that also are creative types, not just like a Pablo, let's say. That just has his opinion on it, but like someone that, have Star Wars creators there that have been like lifelong fans of, and if you have to vet them, that they like all of the media, like the prequels, the sequels, the originals. But giving this kind of power where there's like, oh, we're thinking, it makes me just think like Marvel going in there and being like, oh, so we're thinking about having, putting Secret Wars and we're going to adapt this part of Secret Wars, and if the fans are like, no, we like this one better. Now I get it. If there are like, if you got to think about it, if they had these focus groups before The Last Jedi, and this is always the hot button topic, so get ready for the views to skyrocket, as will the comments. But, one of the great, Mark Hamill himself said, I fundamentally disagree, Ryan, with everything you're doing with the character, but I will try to execute this role as best as I can because you're the director, right? If they had this focus group and they took The Last Jedi there, this focus group before it got shooting, they'd probably be like, no, Luke Skywalker would never do that. And that would then prevent that huge division of those fans that love Luke, but maybe the other people that were wanting something fresh wouldn't have gotten that. So you never know. But I think that I would rather err on the caution of not hindering creativity just for the sake of being afraid to ruffle a few feathers online. We can't, again, when the Acolyte got canceled, they got canceled because it didn't have good views. It had a good, strong opening, right? And then it just fell off. Like, no one in the fan space canceled the Acolyte. all that bad publicity and the fights and stuff and the toxic things, like people weren't watching the show. Like, and I get it. It probably contributed to it. But when the grifters and the people that didn't like Star Wars were like holding their parades and saying like they're the ones that got the Acolyte canceled, they did it. The people not watching did. But the more you let fans believe that they have that power, the more they're going to get even worse, whether on the good side or the bad side, right? There's heroes on both sides. Let's be honest. Some people that don't like the new stuff, they have valid reasons for not liking this new stuff. Some people that love the new stuff, maybe, so yeah, it's just so like when you gave the rundown of what we're going to talk about today or yesterday, and I was like, we're like, because it's like so sad that this, it's like someone.
This is what's happening. Yeah,
I know, and you got to cover it, right? Yeah. But like I remember someone tweeted back with all the drama on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and they were just like, I just want to watch Star Wars videos where people talk about Star Wars, right? So unfortunately, we got to talk about all these side things and behind the curtain, because it's important to the communities and stuff. And the studios are just, it's overcorrecting. Again, I know everyone hated the Zack Snyder movies, and Batman v Superman did bad. But then because the network or the studio freaked out, okay, and they took the Ayer cut, David Ayer's Suicide Squad, and gave it to a trailer house to re-edit the first half of his movie. Away from him. It's not his movie. He said that his movie had a full score. Actually, it wasn't just music like Guardians of the Galaxy. He said the composer had a full score for it, and then it was taken away because they were like, we gotta go back because fans didn't like Batman v Superman. As a lover of that movie, I know that it's not a good movie, but I love it, right? But Batman v Superman was a bad movie. That doesn't mean that every movie now has to be more like Guardians of the Galaxy and just shift away from what that original director had. So now you're going to start having these directors get their visions pulled from them because a fan group's going to be like, no, you shouldn't do that because someone's birthday is going to change, right? Like it's a very slippery slope, and I think it's the wrong move. I yield my time. Fired up now, man.
I'm going to reclaim mine. I think this is I can see how you come up with this idea in your head and you think, okay, this could work. I'll get a bunch of people together. I'm going to pitch ideas about Star Wars projects we're looking at because they're always working on stuff. And then we'll get a consensus. We'll hammer out things. And whether this happens all the time with the products that we eat and we consume and we wear and we drive and we buy. It happens. Focus groups are an essential part of products, right? Creatively, though, that's where it becomes dangerous because everyone comes in with their own agenda. Everyone comes in with their own personal feelings and perspective and subjective point of view on these kinds of things. If you had a Marvel focus group, how many of them would have approved a Guardians of the Galaxy movie? Right? Almost all of them probably would be like, nobody fucking knows these characters. Why are you making a movie about this? Why are you starting with Iron Man? Get Spider-Man somehow. Those are those things that you would have gotten from focus groups. Now, I'm not saying that you can't get legitimate ideas from the woke side or the anti-woke side. And I'm sorry to be simplistic about this in its approach, but that's how I'm using it. I think there is good ideas, possible good ideas rather, all around, right? And I think there are bad faith actors on both sides sometimes because they have their own agendas. No one is perfect on either side of this, of the fandom, by the way. I make that, in my opinion, no one is perfect. Everyone's got their own ideas and agendas. So how are you going to get them into the room? And how are you going to trust that you don't have bad faith people in there who are going to come in there, be all docile and agree with everything you do, and then run to their YouTube channels and go like, I pitched all this stuff and they rejected it, and I'd said not to go with this, and blah, blah, blah. You can have them sign NDAs or whatever, but like they don't care. They'll risk that stuff. And so I think that's the dangerous part of this situation. That being said, you already have a focus group. Get onto YouTube, have one of your people float an idea for fun in an interview with one of the reporters, see what the reaction is, and there's your focus group. It's right there on YouTube. It's right there on social media. You don't need to get people together. And I agree with what Kevin said. It's giving people way too much power who don't need to feel like they have that much power over your franchise, because then in the end, they're going to claim control of your franchise, and that the reason your franchise only is doing well is because of them. And that's not what you want to have going through. Executives have the guts to stand behind your shit, create your shit, find the right creators to create the stuff, stop messing with it, and have the guts to stand behind it when you put it out. And if it fails, it fails. But giving power away, I think, is a very, very dangerous road to be walking down. The social media side of things, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. As long as the actors give permission, I think that's really smart. You keep them away from that kind of stuff. And Elizabeth Olsen said it best in the article. She's like, I stay off of it. That's how I deal with social media. I'm not online, so I'm protected. And for me, I know where to go for a positive experience that makes kids happy. I ignore the other stuff. So yeah.
And she goes to the Smash City Studios YouTube to watch KOTOR movies.
She does. Yes, she does.
By the way, I fixed this. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did notice it 30 minutes ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the show.
No, you're doing great. All right, so let's keep walking through the minefield a little bit and finish off with this THR article. Is Disney bad at Star Wars? Now, I gotta be real. I don't know that there's much to take away from this article, Kevin and Laura. It's basically a rehash of everything we all know about the Star Wars fandom or Star Wars history here. The things that you can maybe take away from it is the viewership numbers. Maybe some people didn't have all the viewership numbers all in one place, and it's certainly you can see the viewership numbers here. Obi-Wan Kenobi, as you mentioned, Laura, earlier, opened to 1.03 billion minutes and stayed consistent 823 million and then 860 million for its finale. That's pretty cool. Andor was nominated obviously for awards. It was 96% of Rotten Tomatoes. It opened with 624 million minutes for falling into the 400 million range, but then jumped back up to 674. Clone Wars here was the Ahsoka season that premiered with 829, declined to average around 570 million minutes for the rest of its run. It's getting a second season. And then the Acolyte, obviously not great numbers there in the end. But the question is asked, like, is Disney bad at Star Wars? And the writer comes back and just says, well, no, but they can do better. So your thoughts, Laura, was this a big art? And nothing against the writer, you got to get paid, I respect it, but like, was this just a bunch of nonsense in the end because it's all stuff we already know?
I mean, I kind of took away from this article of like, is Disney bad at Star Wars? Like, kinda in some respects. Like it kind of depends on your point of view, I suppose. Right. But I actually really enjoyed this. This was kind of a Disney Star Wars retrospective that I thought was really interesting, and there was a lot of stuff that I learned from it. And it was just kind of an interesting thing to sit and look back at all of those things that were announced in 2020 and to kind of see where we are now. It's just kind of fascinating. I mean, they included things even like Star Wars Rebels, like the animation in here about how that's like one of the most highly reviewed things that Star Wars has put out since then. So if there's one thing that people take away from this article, it's to please watch Star Wars Rebels. But overall, I thought that this was I liked this article and I thought it was interesting, but I think that you're right. It is it's a little bit wishy-washy in sort of answering that question. But yeah, he does dive into, but they need to do better. They're doing okay. And yeah, it's made a lot of money, and we don't know how much money because there's not a lot broken out from, the parks and those numbers of who's visiting Galaxy's Edge and who's getting, satisfaction out of that. There's not a lot of numbers on merchandising and what Star Wars is getting from that. But from what we do know, they're doing okay. I mean, they've brought in like a lot of revenue from Star Wars that seems like they've earned back probably their investment at this point. But yeah, there's definitely room for improvement, I think, is where they sort of leave it. And I agree with that, I think.
Yeah, this article almost seemed like your evaluation from your employer, Kevin, where they're just going through all the things, positives you've done and some of the negative things you've done. And at the end saying, you know what, you're not a bad employee, but here are the areas for you to improve upon. And then at the end, I'm really kind of, this line in the article just drove me insane. Any criticism from the sidelines, however, should be tempered with one final point. Making a successful Star Wars project is really hard. Let me tell you something. Making any project in the world of film or TV or animation is really hard. No one says it's easy to make any of this stuff. So in the end, I felt like the article kind of copped out. Am I crazy? Did you take more stuff from this article? Or did you like that everything we need to know about Star Wars really is all in one article here? So it's like a one-stop shop for any information you might need. Oh, you muted yourself. Can't hear you.
my daughter's home, so I just
okay.
in the background screaming. Yeah, I think the article, it's like it's well timed with all the drama and stuff, and it's a way to get the clicks and stuff like that. So I didn't really have any problem with the article. It is cool to have like a retrospective of all the Disney stuff, but it with anything like people like. Even the most highly regarded Disney project, I would think, is Andor, probably critically, right?
Yes.
But like Laura doesn't like it, and she has every right not to like it, or she doesn't like it as much as everybody else, right? Like, so you're not gonna please everyone. So for her, she might think that that's a fail, but thought that Acolyte was, or not Acolyte, but whatever, something else was a win, right? So you're never gonna please everyone, and honestly, like people are allowed to have their opinions. The opinions these days, everybody, like you said. That bullhorn quote is funny. The bullhorn used to not exist, and now it does. I just think the main thing where they like kind of fell off were Disney, because you're not gonna, even like with Marvel, like Thor: The Dark World was panned. No one liked it, right? I liked Iron Man 3. A lot of people didn't like Iron Man 3. Guardians 2, right? Like some people, there's different movies, right? So you're not gonna hit a home run everywhere. The one where they really needed to hit the home run, though, was that sequel trilogy. And, the fact that it still baffles me, I've talked about it, that they just had a baton and they literally said, all right, it's your movie. You can undo anything you want from the prior one, and you can do anything to set up the third one. No, it should have been a thorough line, and here's the storyline, as if it's like, it would be like if like Lord of the Rings was written was made because it was based off a novel, right? They should have had the novel of what the trilogy was going to be. So then the directors would come in and be like, all right, I'm adapting this second novel with my script and my story, but with making sure I follow what happened here, right?
Right.
They didn't do that. I think that is, starting. That's where it fell off, and that was their big failure. And I think their other failure, as we talked about earlier, is just them not defending their actors and stuff like that. But all the projects, like for instance, I love the Boba Fett show and the Obi-Wan show too, and it's usually ranked on the bottom of everyone else's. But Boba Fett rode a Rancor. Obi-Wan fought Vader again in front of a volume. It would have been nice if it was on an Andor set, but what can you do, right? So I think one person's trash is another person's treasure. And so that article, it's cool. Like it describes all the things and like you said, like with the Rebels, that was cool. We just gotta, we gotta remember and celebrate the wins that Disney had, not just the losses. So.
Yeah, that's the thing at the end of the day. I like a little bit more balance. If you've got issues, I'm cool with you having issues, but if you're not also giving them their praise when they deserve it, when they get it right, then it's an imbalance. Do you know what I'm saying? And that gets to be frustrating. And then you become someone whose opinions I question because you're invested in one side. Like, I don't like anybody being super positive all the time, and nor do I like anybody being super negative all the time. So, because usually the middle is where most people exist, and most of the casual fans exist, which is most of the fandom, to be honest, in any franchise, are the casuals, because those are the people that are going to get you to the 100 millions and whatever in this situation. So yeah, I mean, it's a good one-stop shop article for everything. The big thing I took away from this is I didn't know Star Wars Visions was this highly rated in the reviews on the Rotten Tomatoes. That shocked me. It made me very, very happy because I love both seasons of that show.
That's funny. I meant to mention that. I was in my head. I wanted to mention Visions.
98%. Yeah.
And also in regards, I think if Visions was pitched to that focus group, they'd be like, no one's going to.
Oh yeah,
that.
for sure.
100%.
So like Visions is something that people, and even people that like the Rebuild the Galaxy thing, right? Like that's a kids thing, but. So yeah, Visions.
And there's a bunch of original ideas. That's a bunch of taking Star Wars and pushing it in new and different directions. That's all Visions is, and that is one of the most highly regarded things. So that, like, why can't they take that lesson away instead of continuing to go back and do the same over and over again?
Yeah.
It's a valid question. Well, let's end on some positive notes. Let's get into this.
All right, more toxic fandom. Let's go.
Marvel Comics has announced that it will release the Battle of Jakku trilogy, which is bridging the gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, during which peace is threatened by the rise of the First Order. This is a sequel to Return of the Jedi. This is how it's being pitched. The trilogy is to be told across 3 limited series: Insurgency Rising, Republic Under Siege, and Last Stand. It'll be 12 issues total in comics. Star Wars: The Battle of Jakku, Insurgency Rising #1 will kick things off this week. The article came out this week. The issue comes from writer Alex Segura and artist Leonard Kirk and is set shortly after the end of the Battle of Andor. Leia visits Anakin's funeral. Pyre, ahead of departing for Endor, taking a quiet moment to hold Darth Vader's helmet. She opens up about the anger that she feels, and then returns. And Luke warns Leia against leaning into her darkness. And then there's more stuff. I don't want to ruin anything in case people want to watch this. The issue apparently will be on sale now with Insurgency Rising set to be told across 4 issues. That run will conclude on the 6th of November with the first issue in Republic Under Siege landing on November 20th. And that will run 4 issues before Last Stand #1 drops on Christmas Day with the Battle of Jakku trilogy's final 4 issues. So that's a lot to consume, a lot to take a look at. Kevin, do you like this? Does it excite you on any level?
Yeah, it reminds me, there was a comic called Shattered Empire. I don't know if anybody remembers
that.
Oh,
God, yes.
And that was a 4-issue series, too. And that took place after, just loading it up. It has a cool, I remember the poster. It was like of them. And you're like, oh, my God, it's a sequel to Return of the Jedi. And I remember it shows it has like another pilot, and it shows Luke on the Y-wing escaping out of the Death Star and stuff. Yeah. I thought that was a really cool thing that explored literally right after the Death Star exploded.
Yeah.
So this will be interesting covering it. Yeah. Anything to look. I kind of agree. The only I do want a live action Clone Wars movie. I do, but I think that I agree with Laura. Like, there's so much content in that space and that story anyway that it would be cool to tell this story about no war has ever won with that final battle. We all know that there were remnants in the Empire in that game too. Battlefront 2, I think, or what's the one with Iden Versio? I don't remember, but it was with the Emperor and his backup plan and all that. So yeah, I think it'll be cool to see that and just to see how we get there. I think that a lot of people just want to again bridge the gap. It's the 3rd time I've said it today, but to get a bridge from where we were in after Return of the Jedi to where we are at the Force Awakens. And I think the Mandalorian movies, a show, has done a really good job of that, kind of where all of a sudden a cloned Emperor is not out of the blue now, because we know that they were dealing with all those weird things and stuff like that. So I think that I'm excited for the comic series. How about you, Laura?
I'm kind of picky when it comes to comics, but I'll be very curious to check out at least the first issue of this. I'm open-minded. I'll be curious to see how this ties in with the Aftermath trilogy of novels that came out right after the sort of Disney buyout. Alex Segura is the writer of this comic series. He's done work in Star Wars before, I believe. His name looks familiar to me. So yeah, I'm open to reading them. I don't know, the Return of the Jedi period, post Return of the Jedi Mandalorian, we're getting a lot of content in that time period too, between the original trilogy and sequel trilogy. I'm much more inclined to be drawn to the High Republic era and that kind of stuff, where we're in this new era and exploring that part of the galaxy. This is not as interesting to me as that. But I'm open to it. Like I said, I really liked the Aftermath trilogy and the characters that were introduced there. And I'm pretty sure I read the Shattered Empire miniseries. That sounds familiar. So I would check this out.
I feel like Poe Dameron's parents were in it.
Yeah.
And there's a tree at the end.
Dameron,
that's where I was like, there's a tree at the end of it, I think. But
it's 2019 or something like that. Because I think I was still a Collider and we talked about this on one of the Jedi Councils, the Shattered Empire thing. So yeah, I think you're 100% right. And you're right, Laura. Alex Segura wrote Poe Dameron Freefall. That was the one that was out there. In terms of the comics, he has written the Archie comics. He's written for Superman, Spider-Verse, Green Lantern, Scoundrels, Rebels of the Empire, Star Wars Rebellion, and let's see. I'd say the Archie's already. Yeah, so he's got a lot of experience writing for numerous types of franchises. Oh, he did Archie Meets Kiss. Oh, I'd like to see that. I'll read that one there. Dick Tracy, whatever. So clearly got a lot of comic experience in comics. So hopefully can deliver a good series here when it comes out or later this week. So we will see. The big one though, and of course we got to get Kevin's thoughts on this. Here it is, Mace Windu. It's coming out. This is happening. Kevin, are you excited about this? What's your feelings about this? The Glass Abyss. Are you excited to see this? This is taking place immediately after the Phantom Menace. It will send Mace Windu on a mission to fulfill Qui-Gon Jinn's final request. The twist: this request is specifically for Mace, only to be received after Qui-Gon's death. So your thoughts on this one? Was written by, oh, sorry about this. It's written by Stephen Barnes, and it is out now. I've gotten my early copy. Laura, I don't know if you've gotten an early copy of this one. Kevin, what are your thoughts on this one?
Let's listen. I'm going to add it to the Super Watch. I'm going to add it to the book to my overall story, which I'll never finish in 100 years. But yeah, at first I saw it. I'm like, they, it's just going to ruin my chances for. No, it's a prequel. So yeah, I think it's going to be great. Let's get it going, dude. More Mace is always fun. And again, more stuff in between the Phantom Menace. Remember, we've talked about it. I love finding media and stories that are in between the Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. Because I feel like once you get to Attack of the Clones into like everything, like it's so packed, right? So having this little sweet spot to expand the lore is cool. So I'm excited.
Laura, your thoughts on this one, The Glass Abyss? Are you excited? Did you get your copy? And are you excited to read this one?
I did get my copy. It is unfortunately wasted on me because I have no interest in this book at all. I truly don't. Like, I might listen to the audiobook eventually, but Mace Windu was a dick to Iskat Akaris in Rise of the Red Blade. He was a dick to Ahsoka in the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
He's just not, he's not coming back for me. I don't know. He's got to do something major in that book to redeem himself, and I will read about it probably after the fact and then think, well, shit, I should have read that, actually.
Imagine in Obi-Wan Season 2, he's about to kill Luke, and then another blade stops it.
Oh,
right?
Here we go.
And it's Reva, and then Reva says, "This party's over."
No.
I like it. I'm down.
Yeah, that was. I stole that from Brandon Hanna. Sorry.
I'm down for more Reva in any shape or form. So I'm down for Brandon Hanna's idea. Let's put him in the focus group.
Mace, kind of a dick, dude. Like,
kind of.
Sorry, citizens only. Like, what, kid? Give me a break, And
you try to be the only black Jedi for miles around. Yeah, you might become a dick yourself.
But here, I want to bring this up.
Situation.
And I wanted to bring this up because I saw this and it was in between our last show. And I actually talked about it because our theme at the panel at LA Comic-Con was about redemptions and falls. And I covered Anakin. Did you see that? Someone put it on Twitter and it's so fascinating and it involves Mace. So this is on point. Is that when Anakin's about to, like with Dooku and has him on the ropes and Palpatine's like, all right, kill him now. And Anakin's like, I shouldn't. And then he's like, do it. And so he kills him. Yeah. And he's like, I shouldn't have done that. It's not the Jedi way. And Palpatine says he was too deep. He was too dangerous to be kept alive. I never put two and two together. And I don't know, Laura, maybe you did because you had to memorize every single line of the movie in your division. But then when Mace is about to kill Palpatine, Anakin says, no, he must stand trial. It's not the Jedi way. And Mace says to him what Palpatine said to him. No, he's too dangerous to be kept alive. And at that point, Anakin probably is like, dude, you're no better than this man you're trying to kill. You both quoted the same thing. I'm the only one here saying it's the Jedi way. No, I'm going to cut your hand off and throw you out of a window, and then I'm going to kill a bunch of kids. You shouldn't have done that. But I'm saying that with Mace, you're right, he's a dick, and he could have stand down and listened to Anakin and said it's not the Jedi way, but Mace follows his own rules, right? I will say that Shatterpoint is a legacy novel or whatever. That was a pretty good novel about his vape-head stance and his like fighting stance, and it really gets into his mind and stuff. But yeah, Laura, you should read Plagueis anyway. You don't have to read this.
Oh, Jesus Christ. We almost
knew it was coming.
We were so close. We were so close. Anyway, this one, Star Wars Mace Windu, The Glass Abyss, comes out on October 15th from Random House. So give them some love, everybody, and take a look at that one. All right, well, there you go. That's our show. We went over an hour. Sorry to everybody. We try to keep these under an hour because we know you want to consume them in your daily lives. But thank you very much for hanging out with us. We covered a lot in this episode, and I'm sure the comment section's going to be spicy, but thank you very much for watching or listening to us. Kevin Smets, another fun show. Please let people know where they can find you and watch all your stuff and listen.
Let's be honest, the 5 minutes and 15 seconds are because of my rambling, so I appreciate it. I take the full responsibility. Okay. You could find me Smash City Studios. That's where Daisy Ridley and Elizabeth Olsen go to see their social media.
Oh, wow.
Smash City Studios. You can watch KOTOR movies. It's funny. It's really blowing up in the last year. I think at the beginning of the year in January, we had like 22,000, and now it's over. I haven't been keeping track, but it's over 60.
Wow.
Yeah, I think with these releases that we've been doing, I think that fans are finding it. It's not necessarily viral per se, but I'm enjoying that. And so, yeah, we're still working on the KOTOR Convergence movie. And if I rent a theater out, it's a long ways for you, Laura, but maybe I'd love for you guys to come. I might rent a theater out, depending on my work situation. It costs $1,000 to rent a theater for a 2-hour movie, and I'll have a 2-hour cut of it. I did that for episode 3 of KOTOR to see it on the big screen. It's really fun, and it would be with the cast and crew and stuff like that. So details to come on that, probably in the winter time. We'll release probably in December, and maybe I would do a screening sometime in January at a theater.
We could do a live Jedi way. I'm down with that.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Raise funds for Laura's travel. Yeah. Laura, thanks again for another great show. Please let people know where they can find you, what you got going on, Laura Kelly.
Yeah, come find me on Twitter and Instagram at shutup_Laura. You can find my other podcast, Force Toast, a Star Wars Happy Hour at Force Toast Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And in terms of what I got coming up, I'm going to be at the Chicago International Film Fest, just attending movies. If you are upset about the idea of major film studios bringing in fans to do focus groups and driving stories, I would encourage you to start seeking out other media, smaller media, indie media. Find your local film fest and support those movies. Support smaller movies, foreign language movies. Like, support these original ideas. Not saying you have to cancel your Disney Plus or your Netflix membership, but start maybe seeking out some of these smaller things if you want to start. If you put your money where your mouth is and support smaller creators that aren't going to little focus groups full of idiots.
Laura has
imagine a focus group for Pulp Fiction in 1990,
right?
Whatever.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, thank you. As for me, you can follow me at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, The Outlaw Nation on Twitch. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. We crossed 35,000 the other day. I know that's chicken feed to 60,000 KOTOR, but 35,000 is nice for what we're pushing up the hill, this boulder. And so I want to keep it going to get to 50 and 100 at some point down the road. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, would appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. Let us know your comments on all the things we talked about here in the comments section. Please keep it respectful. If not, I'll probably delete your comments. So please keep it respectful here in the chat. We'd love to have that, or down in the comment section, rather. We'd appreciate that. All right, well, there you go. Let's get on out of here. And Laura, what do we have to tell them before we depart?
We have to tell them to remember your focus determines your reality.